So my background is in plant medicine, nutrition. I moved into farming about 10 years ago and then started working with NGOs related to food security and promoting, working with how to access good food. So that's kind of my background. I founded the Kaslo Food Security Project in 2006 through community services there. And in 2009, we opened the doors to the Community Food Center at Kaslo Food Hub. And we acquired accreditation in 2009, which I have a whole other session talking about. My other hats are, I'm a mom, a farmer, and I'm the alternate director for the regional district, which is my only formal government connection. And the reason why I did that is that that's my personal hat. I can take it on and off whenever I want. So if I want food to be on the table at the regional district, I just sit there and say I need food here. And I go to that table and I make presentations, and then I take it off when it's not going to be helpful to me. So I've done that kind of more on a personal level. Enter this. All right. So I have a confession to make. I hate policy. I think policy is kind of irrelevant when we have trade deals that override everything we do. So when one of my first deliverables was to create a food charter, I did it as quick and easy as I could because I wanted to get to the work that was actually going to deal with feeding people in our community. One thing I should actually tell you is our community, an indicator of taking 36 hours to get here, is that I live in a very rural community in the mountains of the Kootenays. The community I live in is only 300 people. The community I work for is about 2,000 people within the regional district of Central Kootenays. One of the major advantages of that small size is that I can go and have coffee with my mayor whenever I want. I can talk to councillors. I can do the networking that a city might take a couple of years to do within a couple of months. So when we did the Kaslo Food Charter, I basically looked at what are the actual legal implications of the charter. If I try and get it adopted, what are they obligated to do as a council, as a municipality? And I found that basically there is not a lot depending on the wording. The lawyer I talked to didn't have any clue what I was talking about, so I had to kind of create a scenario. It was in 2006, so I still didn't know a lot about them. I determined our municipality's capacity, which is mostly not a lot when it comes to food. Someone had mentioned that Wayne Roberts had said that policy is kind of more on a value thinking thing. And
the charter. Just charters, not policy.
Right, charters. Yes. Thank you for that correction. So I am becoming more friendly with policy. So it was kind of more of a vision statement, and so again, that was why I didn't put a lot of effort into it. What I wanted to get from it, well, what are the things that we can then turn around and do as direct actions as a grassroots organization, and that's what I gleaned from it more so. So we established a working group, crafted civil drafts, held public meetings. We basically came out with the final draft, and I did a presentation to Village Council, and I had the presentation we called the Blessed Obstacle, meaning that if you work on this kind of stuff, you're actually just going to rejuvenate the community and develop economy, so it's only for the best. And they went for that as long as I changed the wording from shall to may, meaning they were not obligated to do it. Had it officially adopted. So what Kendall had actually asked me to do, because when she said, can you present on policy, I'm like, I don't really do policy, but she said, think about all the different ways you've worked on policy. It was an interesting practice because I hadn't thought about it, and I actually had to cut off because I've actually worked on a variety of levels. So we took our food charter and we tried to put it into our official community plan. One of the things about small municipalities is they, again, have very little capacity. So our council dealing with what an official community plan was and how to implement it, food security was like way down on the criteria because they didn't know what it meant or anything. So I said, just please have the food charter appendixed into it. And then we tried to do land use planning with them, looking at what lands were available. And that was supposed to be in there. I was on mat leave when they finally adopted the OCP. And so when I came back and said, where is all this verbiage I worked on with Smart Growth BC? And they said, oh, we didn't know how to do it, so we just kept it out. I was like, okay, well, I'll deal with that, thanks. So one of the biggest things I worked on policy with was we were accredited in 2009. Our agency, North Kootenay Community Services, decided to go through accreditation, which was basically 2 years of paperwork. And I was completely against it. Like, I've got stuff to do. I got to get people fed. I got to help the farmers. What do you mean I got to do paperwork for 2 years? And so in the end, I appreciated it because it created policies, guidelines, philosophies for everything we do. The stamp means that we meet every possible standard at the highest level and that we're constantly improving. For a really small organization and small community, it's a pretty important stamp. It's like being certified organic, but for being at a desk. So these are the accreditation policies I worked on. And one of the most interesting ones, I think, is the next one. So where I've actually, this is all stuff that's happening right now, where I'm working on policy-related things, is that we run this food hub that has 9 different programs that work with emergency food access to actually increasing the viability of farming in the region. Those programs, according to current policies, omit each other from certain access. So one of the things is we don't qualify as an official food bank because we also run a bulk buying club, which is farm direct goods from our farmers. So Food Banks BC won't recognize us because we sell food, even though we have an accreditation stamp saying there's no way we could ever turn around and sell donated food. They won't recognize that. So we're appealing that on a variety of levels. And what happened with that was that so Food Banks BC wouldn't recognize us as a food bank, so we couldn't get any food bank access. We're completely community-based. We serve about 180 people a month. We only have 2,000 in our region. So it's a kind of large amount of people for a small community. So then we went to what kind of donations can we access? And the health authority said, well, because you're not an official food bank, you fall under the Food Premises Act. So everything that you get in your door has to meet all those regulations. Okay. So the hunter came in and said, I have a chicken or I have a deer for you, and we had to do this all indirect. Like, don't use my name, go to my neighbor, give it to his freezer, and I'll find a person who can use it. In a small community, you can do that, but it's really inefficient. Meat regulations, most people know about meat inspection regulations in 2007. So our region, one of the ways that our farms actually made money was mostly through selling local healthy meat. And they were a rural and remote community, which should mean that we have designated status. We don't, because there's an abattoir 5 hours away from us just because it's in a regional district. So I've applied to the Ministry of Health to change that, and the Ministry of Health just sent me 2 pages of reiteration of their regulations. So I'm appealing it again. And what's interesting is they're changing who manages it. It's now going to be the Ministry of Agriculture, so I get a whole new person to deal with, which will be helpful. We're working on Crown land acquisitions. One of the biggest things we found is that when we talk about food security, everything is a moot point if you don't have farmers that can stay on the land. And this has been my primary focus. So we have farmers leaving all the time. One of our most viable pieces of land, which we have no class 1 at all. If we got a class 2, we're like really lucky. We're in the mountains. So we've been working on acquiring Crown lands. We looked at all the processes, how to do that. We defined which ones were best. We did all sorts of mapping with Selkirk students to look at ALR land, what's Crown, what's the most viable, what services are available to them, and pinpointed them. And now our next phase is to actually develop a working committee to acquire the land and create a farmland trust for the area. I'm working on a lakehead farm plan. This is one of the things where nonprofits started outside of us to acquire land and maintain people there farming. And they're a really small group of people that just have really good hearts but don't have any idea how to run a nonprofit organization. So I've come into the picture, meaning that I started with farming and then got into I make more money farming words than I do actually farming food. So I got into this part, and now I'm helping them actually create a nonprofit incubator farm that I call a farm hub. We have a food hub, but I can't get food into it because I don't have people growing food. So we're kind of going backwards and looking at a farm hub. Ad hoc policy projects over the 7 years we've been around, I've had all sorts of things come up that have nothing to do with my deliverables, nothing to do with what I'm paid to do, but because I am the person dealing with food, I get wrapped into all these things. So we did an access to produce initiative for the province that looked at what were the barriers to accessing healthy food. We've worked with the Agricultural Land Commission, had them come in to do farm tours. I worked on a climate change project where we assessed and made recommendations for climate adaptation. I didn't put a lot of effort into that one because I knew, again, it's going to be based on money that comes in after that. So I just kind of said, well, this is what should be done. And of course, we've had no money to follow up, so we're just doing it other ways. And I guess the last thing I'll say about our project is we're completely grant-driven. I don't have any formal ties. I have a hosting agency, North Kootenay Community Services, and that's the main way we've been able to maintain this, an executive director who knows how to write grants for our group. And all of this has come at a cost of about $120,000 over 7 years, is what we've been able to do.